My name is Miguel Reyes. I'm 35 years old, and this is how my wife and her sisters decided to teach me a lesson by abandoning me in the middle of nowhere, and how that cruel joke became the beginning of my freedom. The last thing Laura said to me was, "Figure it out on your own," right before she slammed her foot on the accelerator. The roar of the engine swallowed anything I might have answered. Her silver sedan shot out of the parking lot of a lonely gas station in the province of Monte Luz, several hours away from our home in the city of San Dorado. Through the rear window, I saw the silhouettes of her sisters, Carla and Ines, twisting in their seats with laughter as if they had just witnessed the funniest scene of their lives. I stayed there, literally frozen in place on the cracked concrete, holding my jacket tighter against the wind and wondering, in qué momento, everything had gone so wrong. I work in construction, on the ground, as a crew foreman for a company called Sierra Horizon Engineering. I've been married to Laura for about 7 years, or at least I believed I was happily married right up until that exact moment. That weekend was supposed to be simple, a road trip to the wedding of one of her cousins, a chance to get away, just the four of us sharing gas and splitting the cost of a small hotel that Laura had insisted on booking herself. We left San Dorado early that morning, taking the national highway that crosses the country toward the mountains. From the very start of the trip, something felt off. There was a knot in my stomach that wouldn't go away, like the feeling I get on site when a wall looks straight, but something in my gut whispers that the measurements are wrong. Laura kept trading secret looks with her sisters through the rearview mirror, little smirks, raised eyebrows. They whispered between themselves, lowering their voices every time I tried to join the conversation. When I finally asked what was so funny, Laura gave me that practiced, porcelain smile of hers and repeated the same phrase she always used. "Nothing, honey, just sister stuff. You wouldn't understand." I should have trusted my instincts right then, the same instincts that keep my crew safe when we're working high above the ground. About an hour before we reached the town where the wedding would be, we pulled into a small roadside gas station. I told them I was going inside to grab a coffee and use the restroom. I was gone maybe 10 minutes, 15 at most. When I came back out, the air felt different. The sedan was already running, engine humming, all three of them inside with their seatbelts on. Laura had her window rolled down just a few centimeters, enough for me to see a strange expression on her face, something between satisfaction and boredom. "Get in, Laura. We should go or we'll be late," I said automatically as I reached for the passenger handle. It didn't move. The door was locked. "Actually," she said, and her voice sounded colder than the wind that cut across the empty parking lot, "we've been talking on the way here, and the three of us think you need a little bit of independence." I stared at her, convinced I had misheard. "What are you talking about?" I asked, feeling the world tilt under my feet. Carla leaned forward from the back seat, invading Laura's side like she owned the car. "You're always so dependent, Miguel," she said, rolling her eyes. "You follow Laura everywhere like a lost puppy that needs attention. It's honestly kind of pathetic." Ines, the youngest, added with a malicious little smile, "We thought this would be good for you, you know? A little adventure, like the ones you say you used to love when you were younger." My hand tightened around the keys in my pocket, the only keys I had on me. They belonged to our apartment back in San Dorado, not to the car. My work van, my tools, my real way out of any situation were hundreds of kilometers away in our building's garage. "This isn't funny," I said, try to keep my voice steady. "Whatever this joke is, it's gone far enough. Unlock the door." Laura just widened her smile, but her eyes were flat, without a hint of warmth. "It's not a joke, Miguel. It's a little initiation," she replied. "You're always so serious, so rigid. Learn to laugh at yourself for once. Figure out on your own." She shouted that last part as she rolled the window up and hit the gas. The tires squealed, leaving a black mark on the asphalt as the sedan shot out to the highway. For a few seconds, I just stood there, watching the red tail lights fade into the pale horizon of the Monte Luz route until they blended with the other distant traffic. Then the cold wind of late autumn cut through my jacket, carrying the sharp smell of the first snow already forming on the mountains. I pulled out my phone and called Laura. Straight to voicemail. I tried Carla. Same result. As for Ines, she had blocked my number months before after some stupid argument I barely even remembered, and she had never bothered to unblock me. standing there surrounded by empty fields and the constant low hum of cars racing by in the distance. I finally understood this wasn't a silly prank that would end in an hour with them coming back, laughing and pretending it had all been a test. It was something darker. A message screamed in my face about what my wife and her family really thought of me. With my pride crushed, I went back into the gas station and asked the clerk when the next bus to San Dorado passed. The man, who looked like he'd seen every kind of traveler and disaster, shook his head with genuine pity. "No regular line stop here, friend," he said. "But if you can get to Valmora, the regional capital, there's a coach from there that goes to the city later tonight. You'll need a taxi to get there." While I waited for the local radio taxi, my mind drifted back almost a decade to when I met Laura on a construction site at a shopping center. She came in as an environmental consultant, professional, sharp, with this bright energy that made everything else fade when she talked to me. I was just the crew boss back then, but she never made me feel small, at least at the beginning. Her sisters, though, were a different story from day one. Carla, the oldest, worked in marketing and always had a critical comment ready about how I dressed, where I lived, or the way I did things. Ines, several years younger than Laura, still had no idea what she wanted to do with her life, but had more than enough arrogance to judge everyone else's choices. From the first family dinner, they treated me like an intruder, as if I'd stolen something that belonged to them. I remember sitting at tables where they communicated in inside jokes and half phrases, using their own emotional language that kept me outside. There were vacations where they planned entire outings without even asking if I wanted to join, just assuming I'd follow whatever they decided. "They're just protective, Miguel," Laura would tell me whenever I tried to explain how uncomfortable it made me feel. "Give it time. You'll see they'll get used to you." Time didn't soften them. It sharpened everything. After the wedding, things only got worse. Carla threw constant jabs about how my blue-collar lifestyle was holding Laura back from her dreams. Ines rolled her eyes every time I offered to fix a leak, change a tire, or assemble furniture in their apartments. "Not everything in this century needs a guy with a wrench to be solved," she'd say with open contempt. And then there were the small things, the ones that hurt because they piled up slowly. Laura glued to her phone, texting her sister's group chat, even during our supposedly romantic dinners. Plans changed at the last minute, because one of them had an emergency, emotional crisis that demanded Laura immediately. One year, she forgot our anniversary entirely because she was helping Ines move apartments, a job any professional company could have done. The year before that, she skipped my birthday dinner because Carla had broken up with yet another boyfriend and needed comforting. "Family comes first, Miguel," was her unbreakable mantra. I accepted it for a long time. I respect family too. I know what blood ties mean. But somewhere in my naive mind, I thought that after we married, I also became her family. Now, thinking back to the trip, all the warning signs lined up in a straight line. How they insisted I leave my van at home because we'd be more comfortable all together in the sedan. How Laura booked the hotel room only in her name to speed up check-in. How Carla spent 3 hours on the highway poking at my supposed lack of spontaneity. And how Ines laughed from the back, saying, "Remember when you used to be fun, before you turned into this boring, predictable house husband?" I laughed it off to avoid ruining the trip, but the words had stuck in me like a splinter. I had been working more than 50 hours a week to make sure we lacked nothing, keeping the house in good shape, arranging bills, fixing whatever broke. I truly believe that was what a good partner did. Standing in that parking lot, watching the sun sink behind the dry hills of Monte Luz, the truth hit me like a sledgehammer. It wasn't that I had misunderstood what it meant to be a good husband. I had simply chosen the wrong woman. The taxi finally arrived and drove me to Valmora, a bitter ride that cost more than I could really afford. But at that moment, the only thing that mattered was reaching a bus station. The coach ride back to San Dorado took almost 4.5 hours, a slow torture in a narrow seat with the engine noise pounding behind my thoughts. I spent the entire trip staring at my phone, waiting for a message full of panic or guilt, something that said they'd realized they had gone too far. Nothing came. Close to midnight, as the coach rolled past the lights of a smaller city and the countryside blurred outside the window, another layer of reality settled on me. This wasn't about teaching me independence or helping me loosen up. It was a private and public humiliation a ritual to place me at the very bottom of their family hierarchy. I remembered every time I'd given in when they wanted change or vacation plans, every time I bit my tongue instead of answering their barbs, every apology I made for things that weren't really my fault just to keep peace. What hurt the most wasn't being left at the gas station. It was realizing that they had planned it for weeks, maybe months, over coffee in Carla's apartment, laughing about how naive I was. I reached the central station of San Dorado early in the morning with a decision burning inside me. I took a taxi home, expecting to see Laura's sedan parked in our spot, but the garage was empty. I went up anyway, sat at the kitchen table in an apartment that suddenly felt like it didn't belong to me, and called my supervisor to say I wouldn't be at work that day. I wasn't in any condition to step onto scaffolding. Then I did something that had never even crossed my mind before. I started going through Laura's things, not out of jealousy, but from a desperate need to understand who I had really married. She was always careless with security. Although her laptop had a password, she had left her browser tabs open. What I found made my stomach twist. Group chats with her sisters going back months, full of screenshots of my messages decorated with laughing emojis, photos of me sleeping with comments like, out cold, or no awareness at all. The thread about the trip was the final blow. Carla wrote, "We should dump him somewhere and see how long it takes him to find his way back." Ines answered, "Please, yes. He depends on Laura, even to breathe." And Laura, my wife, replied, "You two are awful, but that would be hilarious." They even had a backup plan in case I managed to return quickly. If he gets back early, he'll probably call his mother crying. He's such a baby. I closed the laptop and sat in silence. Without a dramatic note, without yelling or wrecking anything, I packed a suitcase with the basics and walked out. I left the same way they had left me, without looking back, with one difference. I had no intention of returning. I drove my work van to a town on the outskirts, Villa Norte, where my brother Leo lived. He's a quiet guy, works nights at a factory, and had a spare room. When he opened the door and saw me standing there with my duffel bag at a strange hour, he didn't ask stupid questions. He just nodded, handed me a cold beer, and said, "How long do you need?" "I don't know yet," I admitted. Leo had never liked Laura. I'd always known from his silences and early exits on holidays. I told him everything. The abandonment, the messages, the sister's plan. He listened and finally said, "Miguel, you're better off without those people anywhere near your life." On Monday, I requested an immediate transfer within the company to a project on the western side of the city, a hospital renovation where they needed someone with my experience. My boss approved it without hesitation. For a couple of days, things went quiet. Then on Tuesday afternoon, the storm began. Laura had returned to San Dorado and started filling my voicemail with messages. "Miguel, where are you? I came home, and you're not here. This isn't like you. Call me back now." There was not a single hint of remorse, only the irritation of someone who had lost control of their toy. I blocked her number. Then came the calls from Carla and Ines, each from different phones, including work lines and unknown numbers. The speech was always the same. I was overreacting. It was just a harmless joke. I should come back so we could talk like adults. On Thursday, Leo came into the apartment with a tense expression. "Your wife is downstairs," he said. "She's in the car." I looked out the window and saw the familiar sedan parked in front of the building. I met her at the entrance before she could ring the doorbell. "Miguel, thank goodness," she said, stepping forward like she was going to hug me. I moved back. "I've been so worried." "What do you want, Laura?" I asked. "I want you to come home so we can talk like normal people," she insisted. "Talk about how you dumped me at a gas station hours from home and then mocked me in your little group chat." I asked. Her mask of concern cracked, and the old arrogance slipped through. "It was a joke, Miguel. You're turning this into some big drama, as if we'd committed a crime." "You left me stranded and laughed about it for months," I answered. "Because you needed it," she snapped. "You're so clingy and dependent that we thought if you handled things on your own for once, you'd finally grow up." Under the buzzing fluorescent lights of the building entrance, I realized I didn't know this woman at all. "I'm not going back, Laura," she scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. You can't throw away 7 years of marriage over a tantrum." "Watch me," I said, turning toward the elevator as she yelled threats and empty promises that no longer touched me. The next day, I received a message from Carla using another number. "Laura is devastated because of you. Fix this now." Leo glanced at my phone over breakfast and said quietly, "Change your number already." So that's exactly what I did. The following week surprised me. Against all expectations, I got used to my new rhythm. I worked long days on the hospital site, helped Leo with his old car's mechanics on weekends, and, most importantly, I rediscovered what it felt like to make decisions without running them through someone else's filter. I moved into a small apartment in a neighborhood called Puerto Claro. It wasn't luxurious, just a modest place, but it was mine. No arguments about wall colors. No exhausting negotiations about what to watch or where to go. For the first time in nearly a decade, I owned my silence. Then, one evening my phone rang, and I saw my mother's name on the screen. "Miguel, hijo," she said, "Laura has been here." I had been avoiding my parents' calls for days because I didn't have the strength to explain such a bizarre breakup. But apparently, Laura had no such hesitation. "What did she tell you, Mom?" I asked, rubbing my temples. "She says she's going through some kind of nervous crisis, that you disappeared after a family trip, and that you won't answer her calls. She's very worried about you," my mother said. She had always liked Laura, saw her as stable, educated, from a good family, the anchor she thought I needed. "It's not a crisis, Mom," I replied. "It's over. We have problems you can't fix by talking." "What kind of problem could be so serious that you won't even sit down to discuss it?" she asked. I didn't want to get into it. How do you explain group chats full of mockery or the refined cruelty of being abandoned on a highway to someone from another generation, someone who might dismiss it as a childish prank? I knew that if I tried to tell her, it would sound like I was throwing a fit over a joke in bad taste. "I'll call you later, Mom. I need to think," I said, hanging up with a cold rage growing inside. Laura was doing what she loved most, controlling the story, turning me into the unstable one so she could protect her image. That weekend I went back in the city, but not to our old apartment. I visited my friend Diego, a coworker who had been at our wedding. "I heard about you and the boss lady," he said as he opened the door. "I'm really sorry, man. What exactly did you hear?" I asked. "That you blew up after a fight and stormed off without a word. She's supposedly destroyed. At least that's what everyone's been told," he answered. Same script again. She was the victim. I was the impulsive lunatic. We sat on his balcony with a couple of beers, and I told him everything, without sugarcoating a single detail. When I finished, Diego just stared at me for a moment. "That's some cold-blooded stuff, man," he finally said. "Why would anyone do that to their own husband?" "Power," I replied. "It's not that she wanted me gone forever. She liked knowing she could hurt me and that I'd still crawl back." Diego nodded slowly. "You know what I remember from your wedding?" he asked. "During the reception, when you were laughing and having a good time with the guys from the crew, she'd appear out of nowhere. Any excuse was good to drag you somewhere else. Back then I thought it was just normal newlywed clinginess, but now I see it. She couldn't stand seeing you happy unless she was controlling it." That night, before driving back to Puerto Claro, I passed by our old neighborhood. Her car was in the driveway, the living room lights on. I saw her shadow moving behind the curtains, and, for the first time, I didn't feel pain or nostalgia, just a cold determination. I wasn't running away from a toxic marriage anymore. I was walking toward a better life. Over the next months, I set the legal gears in motion. I opened my own bank account, transferred exactly half of our shared savings, not a cent more, not a cent less, and hired a family lawyer named Helena Cruz, known for being tough and meticulous. "Do you have proof of this harassment and manipulation?" she asked in her office near the city center. I showed her the call logs, the messages from his sisters, and even attempts to contact my supervisors at work. I told her how Laura had gone to my parents' house to paint me as unstable. Helena took notes, a slight professional smile on her face. "We can work with this," she said. "Divorce here is no fault, but this pattern of control and emotional abuse is very relevant when it comes to the financial settlement." I signed the divorce papers that same afternoon. "One more thing," Helena added. "From now on, zero contact. Don't answer anything. If she or her sister show up, you look straight ahead and keep walking. Any reaction will be used to frame you as a vengeful husband." On the construction site, things are going well. I've been promoted to supervise several crews instead of just one, and on top of that, I enrolled in a night course in small business management, something I'd always wanted to do, but that Laura had always discouraged with excuses about time and priorities. About 2 months later, Helena called me with updates. Your wife hired an expensive lawyer, she said. They're claiming you abandoned the marital home and that you refused to attend couples therapy, trying to leverage that in the asset division. My stomach clenched. Even cornered, Laura was trying to twist the law. But I have a card to play, Helena continued. I hired a digital forensics expert. Your wife has been telling people that you're aggressive and that she left for her own safety. We found public posts from the same night she left you in Montieluz. She turned her screen toward me. There were photos of Laura and her sisters in a bar, raising shot glasses of some dark berry liqueur, smiling from ear to ear. The caption read, Girls' Night, Total Freedom, No Dead Weight. The timestamp was from late that same evening I spent trying to get back home. This destroys her narrative of being terrified, Helena said. Nobody celebrates freedom like this if they're afraid of the man they supposedly escaped from. In one of the photos, Carla was even wearing my old baseball cap, the one I'd left on the passenger seat. I felt sick seeing how they had turned my belongings into props for their fun. The hearing took place on a gray Tuesday in early spring. I put on my best suit and saw Laura in the hallway, dressed carefully, face arranged in a soft expression. We can still fix this, she said, trying to give me one of those fake tender smiles. I looked straight through her, as if she were made of glass. In the courtroom, her lawyer tried to portray me as unstable, someone who couldn't handle a minor family conflict and had abandoned his poor, fragile wife. But when Helena stood up, the atmosphere changed. She presented the chat screenshots, the party photos, the call records. Her argument was sharp. We are not looking at abandonment, she told the judge, but at a carefully planned humiliation, organized well in advance. Here is proof that they celebrated leaving him on the roadside while he was struggling to find a way home in the middle of the night. The judge, a man of few words, reviewed the documents quietly, while Laura's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear and her face slowly lost its color. The decision was clear: divorce granted under my conditions, no compensatory spousal support for her, and all claims of malicious abandonment dismissed. As we walked out, Laura tried once more to reach me. Miguel, please, just 1 minute, she said. Helena stepped between us like a solid wall. No contact, she reminded both of us calmly. Anything you need to say it through your lawyers. I got into my van and exhaled deeply. About 3 years after that gas station, the nightmare was finally over. My studies paid off, and I founded my own renovation company, Reyes Works. I started with small jobs, but my reputation for being reliable and finishing on time spread quickly. Leo became my first employee, then Diego joined the team. One afternoon, about a year ago, I bumped into Diego at a hardware store in a district called Los Jasmines. Have you heard about Laura? He asked. I hadn't thought about her in ages. No, I said. What now? She got divorced again, he replied. Married some guy from her office a few months after you, and that lasted barely a year. I wasn't surprised. Makes sense, I said, and it was the absolute truth. In the end, Laura and her sisters got a taste of their own medicine. Carla lost her position at the marketing agency after a workplace harassment scandal that damaged the company's reputation. Ines tried to trash my name in our old social circle, but when friends saw the court documents and evidence, they quietly stepped away from her. Laura, after her second failed marriage, now lives almost completely isolated, trapped in that same toxic triangle with her sisters that she always chose over everything else. Some lessons only sink in the hard way. I finally learned mine. My independence was never something they had to teach me. It was something they had slowly tried to strip away. Getting left at that gas station didn't break me. It pushed me back to myself. If you stayed with me until the end, thank you for listening to my story. If any part of it resonated with you, tap the like button. Tell me in the comments what hit you the most and from which country you're watching. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because there are many more real stories like this one on the way.